Look at this man. Do you recognise this man? If so, you may be entitled to financial compensation. Hello and welcome back to my self-titled YouTube channel. I am the eponymous Fiona, and so far I have exclusively made videos about Stardew Valley, but I am also British, so you know what else I'm interested in? That's right, Doctor Who. This thing's really heavy. What does this man make you feel? What does he represent to you? Either you haven't seen the show and you're thinking, he's just a funny little green man, little green ghoul, you know, goblin mode. Or you have seen the show and I just gave you a war flashback. This is a creature called the Absorbaloff, the central villain in Doctor Who Series 2, Episode 10, Love and Monsters, which came out in 2006. Upon release, the episode was met with negative reviews, scorn, contempt, most of which continues to this day. On IMDb, this is the second worst rated episode in Series 2, and the Absorbaloff frequently gets mentioned in lists of worst Doctor Who villains. It is a notorious episode, to the point where even my own husband thinks that it's shit. And trust me, I have considered divorce, but it's good actually. And I did a bunch of research, and I rewatched the whole series while making copious notes, so that I can tell you why. First, I shall address my bias. I have heavy nostalgia for this episode. I was born in 1997, so I was 9 when it came out. So this episode, as well as Russell T Davies' whole run as Doctor Who showrunner from 2005 to 2010, just nostalgic bliss for me. And I also do have a deep-seated personal grudge against Stephen Moffat to the point where I do consider him my personal nemesis. This episode introduced me as a child to ELO's Mr. Blue Sky, and me and my mum would listen to it all the time when I was younger. And she would like poke me during the bit where he goes, "Hey, you with pretty face." And that makes me really warm inside when I think about it. So as much as I try to be cold, clinical, factual, that may skew my perspective. But do you know what else I'm nostalgic about? Spy Kids 3. I loved that movie. And I can admit to you now that that movie is bad. So I'm not without hindsight. I have also held the opinion that this episode is worth defending for years, to the point where on the 29th of August, 2013, 11 full years ago, I made this gift set and posted it to Tumblr with the caption, "I will defend this episode until I die." And I guess I was right, because here I am. So there are two main reasons why this episode is so hated, so notorious. Number one, the Absorbaloff. Number two, the BJ joke. But we'll get to that. Firstly, I think it's important we get on the same page about that episode, because many of you might not have seen it or might not have seen it for years. So we're just going to do a little recap. So just relax, sit back, get a drink, get a snack. Let me explain an episode of Doctor Who to you. But first, let me tell you a little bit about today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal delivery service. Life is hard, you guys. Life is hard. And then you have to cook dinner? Ugh. Factor delivers delicious, ready-to-eat meals right to your door. Every fresh, never frozen meal is chef-crafted, dietitian approved, and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Choose from a weekly menu of 35 options, including vegan, veggie, flexitarian, or protein plus. There's also gourmet options if you're feeling fancy, with premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, truffle butter, broccolini, and asparagus. You can also choose to add on other good stuff, like breakfast, lunch, snacks, or beverages like smoothies and juices. It's also totally flexible. Order as few as 4 meals a week, or as many as 18, and pause or reschedule your deliveries anytime. So whatever your week looks like, Factor's there to save you time and stress. Get 50% off and free shipping on your first Factor box using my link. Click the link in the description, or scan the QR code with your phone. Thank you to Factor for sponsoring this video and supporting the channel. Okay, let's go. Ooh! So Love and Monsters is the first episode of Doctor Who to take what we now refer to as a Doctor Light structure. Basically, the episode doesn't follow the Doctor or the companion like a typical episode would. Instead, it follows someone completely unknown to us, who is central to the storyline being played out. Another example of this is the criminally glazed episode Blink in Series 3. You know, the one with the weeping angels, which primarily follows Sally Sparrow. I don't think that they did anything like this in classic Doctor Who, aka pre-2005. I haven't seen any. I'm sorry, I just don't care. I like my coffee black, my men depressed, and my TV post-1990. I'm not a lore girly, you know. I'm a themes girly. But I am pretty sure that this is the first episode like this because in Doctor Who Confidential, basically it's just like behind the scenes, They say,
For the first episode ever, the Doctor and his companion barely make an appearance.
So I'm going to trust them. But this is quite helpful for us because the Doctor is barely in this episode and there's little continuity for the rest of the show. So if you haven't seen it, you'll be fine. So the episode follows Elton Pope, a normal bloke with a normal job, who introduces himself to us via a retelling of an encounter with the Doctor. From his limited perspective, we see Rose and the Doctor dealing with an unknown alien enemy, in the middle of which the Doctor pauses to approach Elton and asks,
Don't I know you?
To which Elton runs away. Intro sequence. Da-da-da, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. Ooh. Keep it warm. The story is told to us from Elton's point of view, with him filming different parts of the footage at different points during the story. Standing outside his old childhood home, Elton tells us about how he first met the Doctor. When he was 3 or 4, he went downstairs in the night, and the Doctor was in his living room. He doesn't know why. He never got answers. But we can see he's affected by it. He gets kind of emotional talking about it. This is all the information we get for this right now. It's a pretty non-linear narrative, with information being drip-fed to us with a nice pace to keep up the intrigue. For example, Elton's friend behind the camera is called Ursula Blake, a key character who we haven't been introduced to yet. Elton recounts some encounters with aliens that regular viewers of the show will be familiar with. Shop window dummies coming to life from Series 1, Episode 1, Rose, a spaceship crashing into Big Ben from Series 1, Episode 4, Aliens of London, and a spaceship over London from the Christmas special, The Christmas Invasion. These were the inciting incidents, he tells us, for everything that happened since. We then get some of Elton's footage, taken later in the day. The room is dark. He tells us that this alien stuff isn't all he's into, and we get introduced to one of the best elements of the episode.
Then it's Jeff Lynne and the Electric Light Orchestra.
Like I said, I was 9 when this episode came out, and I'd never heard Mr. Blue Sky before, and so this was like a religious experience for me. Then we get some more footage from Elton the next day. So I love that he just did a little extra recording session just to tell us how much he loved ELO. Such a legend. So after all these alien events, he goes on the internet to investigate and finds the blog of someone called Ursula. And look at this blog. Just Web 1 bliss. There's a photo of the Doctor. Elton recognises him. The man hasn't aged a day. Ooh! So Elton meets up with Ursula, who runs the blog, because it turns out they both live in London.
His name is the Doctor.
She tells him about a group she has, the Inner Sanctum, who all study the Doctor. I love the vibe in this scene that she's obviously like trying to get him to ask about the group. She's like being mysterious. She's trying to make it sound really interesting.
I didn't realise you were significant until Mr. Skinner pointed it out.
Who's Mr. Skinner?
Oh, there's a few of us. The Inner Sanctum.
Elton is over the moon that he's met someone who believes him about the Doctor, presumably after a lifetime of being dismissed. So Elton joins their group, who meet up once a week underneath a library. We've got Mr. Skinner.
The Doctor isn't a man, he's more a collection of archetypes.
Mr. Skinner, based red-pilled. We've got Bridget, who lives up north but always travels down for the meetings anyway. And there's Bliss, who they call sweet, which means dumb.
She was ever so sweet, bless.
The group starts off talking about the Doctor, but then they give themselves a name.
London Investigation and Detective Agency. Linda for short.
Did you think of that on the spot?
No, wanted to use it for years.
Bridget starts cooking. If that quiche is sitting in her car while she drives down from the north to London, I wouldn't eat that. Mr. Skinner starts reading his novel. Okay, Elliot vibes. And Bliss and Ursula start singing twee music. They form a band and start playing ELO covers. They're not very good, don't think badly about ELO because of them. Bridget shares that she comes down to London every week to search for her missing daughter.
It wasn't aliens that took her away.
It's just drugs.
So basically we see the group becoming closer. They're not talking about the Doctor anymore. They're just friends. Then, one day, they're doing their terrible ELO cover and the lights go off. And here he is, Victor Kennedy.
Lights!
That's when we met Victor Kennedy.
He's so fucking dramatic. What a king. One of the first things he tells them is that he doesn't shake hands. He has a condition called eczema that means he blisters to the touch. He shows them a recording of the Doctor, including the sound of the TARDIS, which triggers a memory in Elton. Victor Kennedy refocuses the group, gives them homework, tasks to do to get closer to finding the Doctor. Suddenly, he's the leader. As everyone leaves, he calls Bliss back for a private word. As the group walks away, we hear a scream. The next week, it looks like they're at school. Victor at the front at a big desk, everyone at tables in front of him. Elton even raises his hand to speak. He asks where Bliss is, and Victor says she's getting married. Left a message. It successfully distracts the group, and they find a tip-off that leads them to where we began the episode, with Elton's encounter with the Doctor.
It made it worse!
said not. Don't I know you?
Victor admonishes him for running away, threatens to hit him with his cane, but Ursula defends him.
Use that cane on him and you'll get one hell of a smack off me! And then a good kick.
Victor then tells them his new strategy. Get to the doctor via Rose. He gives them a photo of her, and they're doubtful. How are they going to find Rose in a city of 10 million people?
Oh, that's Rose Tyler. She lives just down there. And Mother's Jackie Tyler. Nice family, bit odd.
Elton spots Rose's mum Jackie walking into a laundromat and takes off his shirt, plans to do some surveillance and espionage. But Jackie's one step ahead of him, an expert in target infiltration. She finds an excuse to talk to him, gets him to agree to come round and have a look at her broken washing machine.
Step 3, ingratiate yourself with a joke.
Here we are, complete strangers, and I'm flashing you my knickers.
Jackie's got Rose. After he fixes her washing machine, Jackie mentions she used to have a mate called Mickey who'd do that kind of thing for her, but he's gone now. This is a reference to Mickey Smith, Rose's kind of boyfriend who earlier in the series chose to stay in a parallel world instead of third wheeling forever. Jackie makes them a cup of tea and he asks about Rose. Jackie says she's travelling. She gets a call every now and then, but not often. She keeps Rose's room made up, just in case. Elton flirts awkwardly, and Jackie gives him this look like, oh, maybe she's suddenly glad her daughter's not home. Victor Kennedy is thrilled, tells each of them to come up with a plan of attack, of how Elton should proceed. As they're leaving, he calls Bridget back for a private word, and she gives Mr. Skinner a little kiss goodbye. They gossip about this, and again, we hear a scream. ELO's Turn to Stone plays as we get a montage of all the times Jackie's called Elton over to fix something. And I can't play the song, but it is a banger and you should go listen to it. At the end of the montage, Jackie's handing Elton a glass of wine. She's got that 2006 drip. She's playing some El Divo in the background, and she tells him they've got the place to themselves. Girlie wants to smash. Elton goes into the bathroom to psych himself up. And look, the consent here is kind of weird because Jackie is being very pushy, but then Elton is also prepared to fuck her just to get information, so kind of messy all around. When he returns to Jackie, she's on the phone to Rose. The mood has shifted. She's sad. She apologises to Elton for being silly, tells him to put his shirt back on.
I get left here sometimes, and I don't know where she is. Anything could be happening to her, anything. And I just go a bit mad.
El Divo sings their hearts out and she tells Elton to go, but he doesn't.
But that's when I realised what was really important.
He says, never mind about Rose. He's going to go and get them a pizza because she needs cheering up, and they can hang out just as mates.
Go on, say yes.
Yes.
Jackie agrees, and Mr. Blue Sky plays triumphantly as he fetches them a takeaway and realises that he got so caught up in aliens and conspiracies that he couldn't see his feelings for Ursula. Everything is great, everything's upbeat, but then Mr. Blue Sky fades out. Jackie's waiting for him in the street. God, she's such a good actor because the dread that you feel when you see her just like standing there waiting for him, it's like, I'm in trouble. She went in his coat to give him money for the pizza and found the photo of Rose. Worked out that he must be looking for the doctor because it's never her.
Let me tell you something about those who get left behind, because it's hard, and that's what you become, hard. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that I will never let her down, and I'll protect them both until the end of my life.
She tells him, in essence, to fuck off and leave her alone. Elton's back at Linda, and he agrees with Jackie. It's shameful what he did. They used her. He shouts at Victor, says he ruined everything. They were happy until he came along. He's leaving, tells Mr. Skinner to come with him, and kind of angrily asks Ursula to come on a date with him, to which she agrees. Victor says, "You'll never know, Elton, what the doctor was doing in your house all those years ago." Elton says, "Yeah, I'll never know," and he leaves anyway. Powerful moment. But Victor calls Mr. Skinner back, says he has contact information for Bridget. They can find her together, and Mr. Skinner stays behind. As Elton and Ursula walk away to go on their first date, we hear a scream.
Crispy aromatic cup.
Ursula realises she's left her phone, so they have to go back. But the office is empty. Mr. Skinner's not there, and Victor is holding a comically large newspaper. But his hands, look at his hands.
Look at the rest of me.
Alien reveal. He's an alien, you guys. You forgot what show we were watching. There's aliens in it. It's called Doctor Who. Then they hear Mr. Skinner.
Where am I?
He's been absorbed and so has Bridget, and so has Bliss. They're all just faces sticking out of his body.
You're some sort of absorbaloff.
Yes, I like.
I love Peter Kay in this scene. He's really just feeling himself. Also, he suddenly has a northern accent, which is his real accent, but I can't help but feel like it's classist in a small way. But I guess lots of planets have a north. Even Clom. He reveals his plan all along, to meet the Doctor and absorb him. He probably tastes so good with all of that juicy, yummy knowledge. Nom nom nom. Ursula threatens him, orders him to let their friends go, but Vincent grabs her. Just one touch, that's all it takes. She's being absorbed. Elton tries to save her, but...
Don't touch me! Oh, I'm so sorry. You can't touch me.
Ursula. That shit is sad, man. It gives me goosebumps. She delivers it so well. They didn't even get to go on their first date. R.I.P. She is absorbed, and her face joins the collection.
It tastes like chicken.
Elton begs him to give her back, but he says he can't. It's irreversible. Then Ursula says she can read the Absorbaloff's thoughts. And Elton is next. Run, Elton, run! Then we get this fucking terrifying moment of the Absorbaloff just vaulting over the table. Jesus Christ. And he chases Elton out into the street until they reach a dead end. And Elton just gives up.
There's no point. Where would I go? Everything I ever wanted.
It's being absorbed.
He's about to be absorbed when we hear the noise that has been so iconic through the episode. The noise of the TARDIS. Out comes the Doctor and Rose.
You upset my mum. No one upsets my mum.
The Absorbaloff threatens Elton, says he'll absorb him unless the Doctor sacrifices himself to be absorbed instead. He's studied him, knows he's a good man, that he shows mercy.
Sweet, maybe, passionate. I suppose, but don't ever mistake that for night.
You'll die, Doctor!
Come on. For a moment, we think the Doctor's just gonna let Elton die. But then he says...
Mind you, the others might have something to say.
The other members of Linda realise they can pull, and so they do, making the Absorbaloff drop his cane. Elton smashes it, and the Absorbaloff turns to liquid. The cane was a limitation field, meant he could only absorb so much. Without it, he's being absorbed by the Earth. And he returns, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, etc. Ursula's face raises through a paving slab to say goodbye. Despite being angry with Elton, Rose asks who she was, and he says,
That was Ursula.
Rose hugs him as he cries. And finally, Elton gets his answers about what happened that night. There was an elemental shade in his house, a living shadow. The Doctor stopped it, but he was too late to save her. And we learn that this is the night Elton's mother died. All this time looking for answers, not just out of curiosity, but out of grief, out of love. Hello, sorry if I sound a bit different now. I'm having to re-record a little bit on a different day because I lost some footage, but I will be back in approximately 10 minutes. The final part of Mr. Blue Sky plays over footage of Elton's mother, and we get a shot of her leaving him, walking away, and it gives me goosebumps every damn time. We cut back to Elton at his desk.
We forget because we must.
Then he does a little speech, and it's very relevant to some stuff we'll talk about later, so I'm going to play it to you in full.
Stephen King said once, salvation and damnation are the same thing, and I never knew what he meant, but I do now, because the Doctor might be wonderful, but thinking back, I was having such a special time, just for a bit. I had this nice little gang, and they were destroyed. It's not his fault. Maybe that's what happens if you touch the Doctor, even for a second. I keep thinking of Rose and Jackie, and how much longer before they pay the price.
Then a little voice says,
Oh, now don't get all miserable. Come on, Elton, you still got me.
Because the Doctor had a trick up his sleeve. Using his sonic screwdriver, he was able to separate the last victim by keying into the absorption matrix, which is classic Doctor Who logic. It's too late for total reconstruction, but...
Elton, fetch a spade!
And, okay, go with me on this. If you don't know where this is going, stay with me here. She's a paving slab now. Stay with me. She says it could be worse. It's quite peaceful. And he says it's a relationship. They manage.
I've even got a bit of a love life.
Oh, let's not go into that.
Stay with me here, guys. He doesn't care what anyone thinks. He loves her. Thing is...
You know, when you're a kid, they tell you it's all grow up, get a job, get married, get a house, have a kid, and that's it. The truth is, the world is so much stranger than that. It's so much darker, and so much madder, and so much better.
The end. In the end, isn't it about the love and monsters we made along the way? So we're going to do some groundwork before we get into our analysis. Let me pull some research out for you. So, like I said, 2 notorious things about this episode. First, the monster. This absolute unit right here. This piece of information is the British equivalent of, did you know Viggo Mortensen broke his foot kicking that helmet in the 2 Towers? But, did you know, this monster was designed by a kid? There was a Blue Peter competition announced on the 19th of July 2005 to design a monster to be featured in the show. And after 43,920 entries, the winner was 9-year-old William Grantham with the Absorbaloff.
William!
When I talked to my husband about this, he referenced the widely believed rumour that the kid who created the Absorbaloff actually thought it ended up naff. And that's a good way of belittling the episode, right? Oh, it was invented by a kid and even he thought it was shit. But this is untrue. So I think this largely came from Doctor Who Confidential, which, if you don't know, is a companion show that used to air directly after Doctor Who, with behind-the-scenes footage, interviews with the cast and crew, with stuff like how they made the monsters, how they shot everything. Really cool to watch as a kid and see how your favourite show gets made. So in the Confidential episode for Love and Monsters, Russell T Davies, showrunner, writer, deity I definitely don't have a shrine to, says this.
And what the little lad hadn't said was that he imagined the Absorbaloff was the size of a double-decker bus. So he was actually quite disappointed that it was a man in a costume. And we're like, well, you never said. So if we'd known, I would have written in, oh my God, you're the size of a double-decker bus.
But William Grantham, competition winner, who I think is probably about the same age as me, also has a YouTube channel called Channel Pup, to which he uploaded in 2021 a retrospective about his whole experience, where he dispelled the rumour that he was disappointed in the outcome.
Now let me just set the record straight here. The Absorbaloff could have been nothing like the drawing, and it still would have been exciting for me, because I'd effectively made a small contribution towards what was at the time my favourite show. As it is, the final design of the Absorbaloff is still, I would say, immediately recognisable as the drawing. So it's even if that episode sucked, even if I did agree with the general consensus that Love and Monsters wasn't very good, I can't be mad about it. I just can't, because it wasn't even just about Absorbaloff or the episode anymore. It was about the experience. It was about meeting all those people along the way, meeting my heroes. Now, even so, as for my thoughts on Love and Monsters as an episode, trying to be as unbiased as possible, I still can't fathom hating this episode or disliking it. I think there is some pretty objectively nuanced stuff in this episode. And in my opinion, it's a good episode, only made better by an enriching experience.
So, he doesn't think it's shit, but do we think it's shit? Look, it's not scary in the same way that a lot of Doctor Who monsters are. It's not a weeping angel. It's not literally the devil like they had in the episode before. It's not the Daleks or the Cybermen. It's goofy. It's Peter Kay. It's supposed to be funny. He's a comedian.
It's been absolutely fantastic. Fantastic. And tomorrow, I get my alien costume.
Russell T Davies said to the Radio Times, "It's a straight part, but it's still very funny. Peter's not coming in playing Ibsen. Actually, we don't want anyone coming in playing Ibsen. There's a size and a style to Doctor Who, and a lightness and wit, no matter how serious it gets. Peter can capture that, absolutely." So Ibsen is a 19th century playwright who wrote these very serious plays, criticising society, getting psychological, largely thought of as the biggest influence in making plays go from just entertainment to an art form. His work had a real emphasis on realism, naturalistic dialogue, no gods or ghosts or soliloquies or non-linear narratives. Basically, the fourth wall is up, it's opaque, it's basically like the audience isn't even there, and these characters are just living their lives. So Russell T Davies is saying they don't want that. They don't want realism and groundedness, because how can you do that in a show about aliens? But like he says, the show does still get serious. One of the biggest influences on me in the way that I write is this scene from Only Fools and Horses. I watched this show as a kid with my grandparents and I don't remember much, but I remember this scene. It's the scene in the lift where Rodney tells Del Boy about how his wife lost her pregnancy. It's a show that's usually a comedy, it's got a laugh track and everything. So when that all gets quiet and we just hear Rodney pouring his heart out, it hits so hard. And at the end of it, Del Boy makes a joke.
Just been lying, haven't I?
And what about Cassandra?
Not her. Cassandra can't tell a lie.
Raquel can. The moment one leaves my lips.
And it's so cathartic. You can hear it in the audience. The slow, hesitant laughter building up when they realise it's safe to laugh at, that the serious part is over. And that interplay between comedy and tragedy always stuck with me. There's a reason the symbol of the theatre is the comedy and tragedy masks. They're two sides of the same coin. To me, personally, to my tastes, doing one without the other is pointless. True realism is both, because life is both. I'll never write a comedy without some dark humour. I'll never write a tragedy without some jokes. And neither will Russell T Davies, so we're basically the same, you guys. This principle applies not only to Peter Kay's performance within the episode, but to the episode's place within the series. Love and Monsters is episode 10. Episodes 8 and 9, the monster of the week was literally the devil. Episodes 12 and 13, the finale, are, quote, very dark and very traumatic. Episode 11, the one after Love and Monsters, is Fear Her. And according to a 2011 interview with the writer, Russell T Davies asked him to write a script aimed at children, precisely because the big traumatic finale was coming up. So that balance is deliberate. Traumatic two-parter, 2 lighter episodes with sillier villains, traumatic two-parter. The absorbaloff himself is the catharsis. It's helping to balance that tone. It's literally catharsis. This episode of Doctor Who goes all the way back to ancient Greek theatre. Write that down. So not all the villains have to be scary. Look at the farting Slitheen, look at the cat people. You might watch Blink and think the whole show has this somber, life or death kind of tone, but it doesn't. It plays with comedy in such an effective way.
I think we do sort of dare to push the comedy, perhaps slightly further than we normally do. But then, again, that's part of the joy of Doctor Who, is that you can do that. One week you can have something as dark as some of the elements in the Satan Pit are. And then the next week you can have running through doors and you know, the wrong coloured buckets of water and all that stuff.
And yet, I remember being 9 years old, having just watched this episode, and lying in bed that night and being so terrified. I think it was the chase scene. That shit is scary. He's so fast. And the existential horror of existing as an immovable face on someone's body for all eternity. You want to talk about horror? There is no body horror as effective as the concept of being stuck on Peter Kay's arse. When we talk about monsters, we're not really talking about monsters. This isn't an original idea, you know, and it's not really my area, but monsters are narrative devices. Monsters reflect our fears back at us. Vampires are so tied up in sex and taboo and capitalism and temptation and religion. Zombies are about our fear of death, losing your autonomy. Look at the Cybermen, reintroduced also in Series 2 of Doctor Who. Cybermen are humans that have been converted into robots, and in order for them to function, they have an emotional inhibitor, something that switches their feelings off so they don't go mad about what they've become. How the Doctor defeats them is by turning this off, allowing them to feel, allowing them to see their own twisted humanity, to feel the pain that the villain of the episode thinks is worth erasing. As humans, we dislike pain. We dislike hurt and grief and sorrow. Sometimes we wish we could just turn it off. But the concept of Cybermen teaches us that our emotions are our humanity, and our humanity is valuable and worth preserving.
Tell me, Doctor, have you known grief and rage and pain?
Yes, I have.
And they hurt?
Oh, yes.
I can set you free. Would you not want that? A life without pain?
You might as well kill me.
It's also tied up in fear of death. The villain wants to be a Cyberman because he's dying. And, you know, anxieties about technology. Like, what I'm saying is that monsters aren't just monsters. Monsters always represent something. In good episodes, anyway. Russell T Davies is so good at this. Basically every episode you can tie the central theme to the monster. Except when Stephen Moffat comes in, but I will save my Moffat hate for other videos. Girl in the Fireplace, most overrated episode of all time. So, what does the absorbaloff represent? Well, the people behind Doctor Who didn't design it. A kid did. They tweaked a few things, but most of his original design is there. The mohawk, the faces, the absorbing. So you're kind of working backwards, right? Starting with the monster design, pulling some themes out of it instead of the other way around. Now, there's one interpretation of Peter Kay's character that seems to be pretty common. Writing in 2006, one blog wrote, "If you look precisely 2 millimeters below the surface for subtext, you'll easily spot that Love and Monsters was about the dynamics of Doctor Who and other similar fan groups. Doctor Who fans usually get together at first to talk about their favourite episodes, etc. But pretty soon they're just nattering on about the usual stuff. Then, someone with a disorder straight from the scary pages of the DSM-4 will turn up and it'll all turn to rubbish. Before you know it, you're all hiding upstairs with the lights turned off to stop him thinking you're in. But when he's gone, you can all have fun again." So I see this pop up everywhere. Linda is like a Doctor Who fan group. Vincent is the super fan that makes it weird. He's obsessed with the Doctor. You could say he wants to absorb the Doctor and like make the Doctor part of his personality. He absorbs the others in that he sucks them into his obsession, takes them away from the real world.
But this episode takes a very sort of meta perspective in that it kind of works as like a metaphor for Doctor Who fans.
And I do think this is onto something, but personally I prefer to look at it within the context of this series itself, instead of trying to draw parallels to real life fan groups. With how good Russell T Davies is, I don't think he would write a whole episode based around that one kind of shallow point of comparison. He does reference Linda as being like a fan group.
People are always ready to take the mickey out of fans, and actually it's a pool of people with a shared love of something. No one ever takes the mickey out of football fans. Everyone thinks that's marvellous and macho and brilliant and fantastic. If you're a fan of a television programme, you're considered to be an idiot. And it's not fair, and it's wrong, and the men from Linda are liberating that opinion, I think.
But yeah, like that blog said, that's kind of 2mm below the surface. And Russell T Davies isn't a 2mm below the surface kind of guy. So we're going to get deeper than that. 3mm. What do I think the absorbaloff represents? Well, we're going to have to get into some themes here. I feel like those two sentences are representative of my whole channel and personality. Gonna sit down for this, but I'm getting tired. The way I see it, this episode has a lot of themes going on, all kind of expertly woven through the narrative. We've got those who get left behind, salvation and damnation, consequences, temptation, hubris. Now, let's zoom out. Let's look at this series of Doctor Who as a whole. AKA, let me talk to you for a while about one of my lifelong special interests. Because this episode isn't just standalone. It's not a short film. It's part of a team. Series 2 is my favourite series, not just because I have shipped Rose and Ten for literal decades, but it also tells such a successful series-long story. In Series 1, we had Bad Wolf popping up through the episodes, and in this series, we get Torchwood. Before I get started, incredible spoilers for this series of Doctor Who. If you haven't seen it, I am giving you the strongest recommendation that is humanly possible. You have to start with Series 1 though. I hate it when people skip Series 1. Christopher Eccleston died for your sins. In episode 2, the Doctor and Rose arrive in Scotland in the 1800s, and they run into Queen Victoria, and they end up hanging out with her in a big house with a werewolf. Great episode. But for the most part, the Doctor and Rose end up just like fucking around, being cute. They take it seriously when they need to, but there's a lot of that light-hearted wit that Russell T Davies mentioned. I saw a review of this series that said that Rose and the Doctor are too cutesy together, that they've got kind of like a shtick. And while I love their shtick, I would also say that it's intentional. The Doctor spends half of this episode doing a Scottish accent.
Are we in Scotland?
And Rose tries multiple times to get Queen Victoria to say that she's not amused. They literally make a bet about it.
I bet you £5 I can make her say it. 10 quid.
Done.
And she still tries to get her to say it even when they're in danger, to the point where Queen Victoria does call her out.
Do you think this funny?
No, I'm sorry.
So this is our hubris coming into play. Overconfidence, facetiousness. Then at the end of the episode, Victoria banishes them. They kind of hand wave it where she's banishing them from. I think it's supposed to be the whole of the UK, so she did kind of a bad job because it doesn't have any effect. In the next episode, they're literally in London, so...
I don't know what you are, the two of you, but I know that you consort with stars and magic and think it fun. And you will reflect, I hope, on how you came to stray so far from all that is good and how much longer you may survive this terrible life.
Fucking banger of a speech. Victoria, good job. So, Queen Victoria is saying, guys, it's super fucked up that all that fucked up shit just happened and you thought it was fun. You seem like you do it all the time. The shtick of them always making jokes has been noticed and has led directly to consequences. Because not only did they get banished, but right at the end, Victoria founds Torchwood, named after the house that everything happened in, Torchwood House.
Although we may not speak of these events in public, they will not be forgotten. I propose an institute to investigate these strange happenings and to fight them. I would call it Torchwood, the Torchwood Institute. And if this doctor should return, then he should beware, because Torchwood will be waiting.
And this is not an empty threat, because at the end of Series 2, the Torchwood Institute is the thing that causes the Daleks and the Cybermen to come through the void. And in doing that, it leads to the events that trap Rose in the parallel world, meaning she can never see the Doctor again. So their actions, their shitty attitude back in episode 2 means that all the way in episode 13, in the finale, they are forever separated. Consequences. Ooh. So our next theme is those who get left behind. In Tooth and Claw, episode 2, Queen Victoria talks about Prince Albert, who was her husband, IRL. She talks about how he is dead, and she misses him.
And that's the charm of a ghost story, isn't it? The hope of some contact with the great beyond. The dead stay silent, and we must wait.
And then the werewolf ends up being defeated by a combination of a telescope made by a guy's dead dad and a diamond made by her dead husband. And the doctor says that this is a message from the great beyond.
I think your husband cut that diamond to save your life. He's protecting you even now, Mum, from beyond the grave.
Theme addressed. Moving on to episode 3, School Reunion. Flawless episode. God, it's packed so full of delicious themes. Nom 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 nom. So in this episode, the Doctor and Rose are joined not only by Rose's kind of boyfriend, Mickey, but the Doctor's old companion from Classic Who, Sarah Jane Smith, who we love and are obsessed with. R.I.P. Queen. We miss you. And you would think that this inclusion of her is just fan service, kind of like the old companions are these days. Like, chuck them in to make the old people happy. But no, this is series 2 we're talking about. Her inclusion ties in perfectly with our themes, because she's not just happy to see the Doctor. She is pissed. He left her. He left her in Aberdeen when she lives in Croydon, which is literally the opposite side of... It's not even just the opposite side of the country, it's the opposite side of Britain. And Sarah Jane has some beautiful lines about being left behind.
You know what the most difficult thing was? Coping with what happens next and with what doesn't happen next. You took me to the furthest reaches of the galaxy. You showed me supernovas, intergalactic battles, and then you just dropped me back on Earth. How could anything compare to that?
It's literally Down Bad by Taylor Swift. In that song, she compares the relationship to being beamed up in a spaceship, shown loads of cool shit, and they're just like dumped back down on Earth. And that's literally what happened to Sarah Jane. It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor, see? It's a metaphor for heartbreak, for loss, for grief. And in this episode, God, I love this episode. Sarah Jane's inclusion makes everyone reevaluate their relationships. Rose realizes she's just one in a long line of companions, that they will get separated. She doesn't feel special in her relationship with the Doctor. She'll be left behind too.
Now this is really seeing the future. You just leave us behind. Is that what you're going to do to me?
Mickey realizes that he is the tin dog. He is a tertiary character. He's not important to them. He's been superseded in his relationship with Rose. The Doctor's history and past is brought in through Sarah Jane to stir up all of these questions, to provoke character growth. And at the end of the episode, the Doctor is tempted by the bad guy, Anthony Stewart Head. He's so good in this role. To join him. He's been listening to their conversations. He's picked up on this theme, this tension, this elephant in the room in every episode of Doctor Who, that it's all going to end, and more often than not, end tragically. He tells the Doctor, with the power they're trying to unlock, he could make his companions immortal. They could travel with him forever. He could be a god. And the Doctor is tempted. There's a good long moment where he's really thinking about it. But then Sarah Jane chimes in. Not Rose, who is seemingly also tempted by this idea of forever. Sarah Jane.
No, the universe has to move forward. Pain and loss, they define us as much as happiness or love. Whether it's a world or a relationship, everything has its time and everything ends.
And that's when the Doctor decides not to turn dark side. He ruins their plans. He defeats the baddies. He gives up that power that he could have had. And this is where we see the start of this theme that continues in the Cybermen episodes that I mentioned. How emotions, good and bad, define us. They shape us. They're a part of the human experience. And at the end, when Sarah Jane is saying goodbye, Rose asks her, should I stay with him? Should I keep travelling with him if he's just going to leave me behind? If it's all just going to end? And Sarah Jane tells her, some things are worth getting your heart broken for. When she says goodbye to the Doctor, he says it's not goodbye, but she insists.
Oh, it's not goodbye.
You say it, please. This time. Say it.
She spent all this time waiting for him. No other man ever measured up, but now she can move on. And then the TARDIS disappears. And she doesn't look at first, tries to pretend she doesn't care, but she does. She turns. Part of her wishes she had gone with him. And she turns because it's okay to be upset. It's okay to grieve what you lost. But she has closure now. It's this beautiful, incredibly tight story of a past companion who was left waiting for decades, finally getting that closure that she needed, dealing with feelings of being left behind, making the Doctor face consequences for his actions, making Rose think about their relationship, making Mickey think about his purpose. And it's Sarah Jane, realising that everything has to end, who saves the day. Love that episode. Underrated episode. Perfect episode. Perfect, 10 out of 10. So this theme continues in other episodes. I won't go as deep into all of them as I did that one, but Girl in the Fireplace kind of clumsily name drops this theme in that, the Doctor is popping in and out of Madame de Pompadour's life and ends up totally leaving her behind at the end. In the Cybermen episodes, Mickey chooses to stay in the parallel universe because of those thoughts brought up by the Sarah Jane episode, that he's a third wheel, he's the tin dog. They figuratively had already left him behind. Even though he was traveling with them, he knew he wasn't important to them. So he left them behind by getting them to leave him behind. In The Idiot's Lantern, we have an abusive father figure who is condemned by everyone in the episode, including the Doctor and Rose. When he's finally kicked out, they see that his son is upset by it, and this happens.
You're clever enough to save the world, so don't stop there. Go on.
This is the only time in the episode that this guy is shown any sort of sympathy. And it's not sympathy really, it's just them encouraging Tommy to stay in this guy's life, to acknowledge his nuance. Because if that guy goes off on his own, he won't change. He'll stay abusive, but just to someone else. But if his kid stays in his life and encourages kindness, maybe he will change. From this, we see that the Doctor and Rose don't want to leave people behind. They see the consequences directly, and they do something about it. And they kind of congratulate themselves afterwards by cheersing. And it's also most likely Rose working through her feelings about her dad. Her dad died when she was a kid, and in the last episode, she had to leave him behind in a parallel universe. So she knows the value of that relationship, and she won't let Tommy just write his dad off. Although for the record, it is valid to cut off an abusive parent. You do what's best for you. Love you. Then we get to the two-parter of The Impossible Planet and The Satan Pit, which is arguably the best two-parter in the entire show. In these episodes, the Doctor and Rose come face to face with literally the devil. Although it's not confirmed if it's literally the devil, that's kind of a plot point that they can't ever know if it's, literally the devil. Anyway, these episodes are so good. And if I go into this too much, I will talk about it forever and ever and ever. But this is the closest that Ten and Rose as a duo ever come to dying. Shit is so bad at one point. So the Doctor comes in and sees that this group of humans is on a planet that's orbiting a black hole, which is something that's so incredibly dangerous. And he literally hugs the captain because he loves that humans are so goddamn cheeky, so curious.
So, when it comes right down to it, why did you come here? Because it was there. Brilliant. Zach, wasn't it? Just stand there, because I'm gonna hug you. Human beings, you are amazing! Ha!
But through these two episodes, he changes his mind on this entirely, to the point where at the end, he says this.
And the next time you get curious about something, what's the point? I'll just go blundering in. The human race.
It's not curiosity. It's temptation.
It's not the urge to jump, it's deeper than that. It's the urge to fall.
To lose control. To self-destruct. The call of the void. And he does fall. At one point, the Doctor has a choice between falling an unknown distance or just waiting to run out of oxygen. And he chooses to fall. And the only reason that they survive this is because they have plot armor. Because the Doctor thought that the TARDIS was destroyed at this point, but he just happens to find it when he needs it. If he didn't find it in that moment through sheer incomprehensible luck, he would have killed himself, Rose, 3 other people, and the Ood. And as a quick mention, the captain says that he represents the Torchwood archives. So this is also a consequence of their previous actions. And what did the Doctor and Rose learn from this experience?
Who are you? Oh, stuff of legend.
Hubris. Pure, unfiltered hubris. Rose, at the climax of these episodes, is at a point where she thinks that she's stuck light years from Earth, years and years in the future, completely alone. And then she thinks she's fully about to be sucked into a black hole. And then the Doctor saves her, and she doesn't think, oh hey, maybe I should stop doing this now. No, she wants to keep going. Forever. We see this in 2 episodes' time. She says she's going to travel with him forever. Girlie, I know he's hot, but where's that survival instinct? But the Doctor overrides that in her. It's the urge to fall, to self-destruct, the call of the void. So another one of our themes is salvation and damnation, and we start to see that in these episodes. Because obviously we've got a very religious theme, fire and brimstone, literally the devil. The devil compares himself to the Doctor a few times in what they both represent.
This one knows me, as I know him.
And he's not wrong. Temptation, pride, fury and rage. In one instance, the beast refers to himself as the prince and the fool and the agony.
I am the prince and the fool of the agony!
And here in Love and Monsters, we see Mr. Skinner's presentation. And what's on there? The Fool and the King. They're both these collections of archetypes, these mythical figures. But interestingly, the Doctor is also compared to a god. When he saves them from the black hole, one of the passengers says, "Thank God." And he is literally defeating the devil in that moment. And way back in the very first episode of this series, New Earth, the face of Bo, don't ask, refers to the Doctor as a lonely god. Furthermore, if we get super out there with it, you know how I said that it's like so super unlikely that he just stumbled across the TARDIS in that episode when they were at a point of almost certain death? One could almost call it a Deus ex machina, which means God from the machine, referring to an ancient Greek theatre convention where a machine would be used to bring an actor playing a god onto the stage so that the god could resolve the plot from a seemingly unsalvageable situation. If we call this moment a Deus ex machina, who is the god here? Did God give the Doctor the TARDIS as a reward for defeating the devil? Or is the Doctor himself in the role of God, able to once again snatch victory from the jaws of defeat? So yeah, we have a lot of comparisons between the Doctor and God, so I think it's really interesting to divert this so late in the series with these episodes and tie parallels instead between the Doctor and the devil. And then this episode is immediately followed by Love and Monsters, where Elton quotes Stephen King. Salvation and damnation are the same thing.
Because the Doctor might be wonderful, but thinking back, I was having such a special time. I had this nice little gang, and they were destroyed.
So we've tied the Doctor to both God and the devil, but he's essentially both, right? In New Earth, I haven't talked a lot about New Earth because it's the first episode. I see it as like kind of a pilot for the 10th Doctor. But in that episode, there are a bunch of humans being used as lab rats, and he saves them. But then in doing that, he does doom a bunch of other humans to die of curable diseases. In Tooth and Claw, he saves Queen Victoria, but he doesn't save everyone. And he starts the chain of events that eventually leads to Torchwood. In School Reunion, he gave Sarah Jane this wonderful adventure in time and space, but then he also left her waiting for like 30 years to the point where she never settled down. He let K9 sacrifice himself, and then he also brought him back. In Girl in the Fireplace, to Renette, he is salvation and damnation because even though he saves her, every time he shows up, it's an omen of danger. In Rise of the Cybermen, he does destroy the Cybermen, saving everyone, but he only does this through essentially torturing them, making thousands, if not millions of humans realize they've been turned into Cybermen, which drives them so crazy that they die. In The Idiot's Lantern, he mostly does good, but to the dad of that family, he is the worst thing to ever happen to him. In The Impossible Planet, he's the one that sends the crew hurtling towards the black hole, only to pull them out of it. And this crescendos in Love and Monsters, because the Doctor is essentially the best and the worst thing to ever happen to Elton. He is the inciting incident for his whole life. First off, he was there the night that his mum died. He saved Elton from the living shadow, but he wasn't in time to save her. He's the reason Elton started looking into the alien stuff, found Ursula and his friends, had a nice time, but this led to the majority of them being killed because Victor Kennedy wanted to find the Doctor, and he used the group to do it. He saves Elton at the end, kind of, but he says it's too late for a full reconstruction of Ursula. Once again, he wasn't in time to save her. He does bring her back, but she's a paving slab. He's like the monkey's paw. You get something good, but there are consequences. It's a theme that the show as a whole plays with. Because of the Monster of the Week format, the Doctor zipping around the universe and running into trouble, if he shows up where you are, it's an omen of misfortune. Because whether it's his fault or not, trouble will immediately follow. Our theme of being left behind crescendos in this episode as well. We've got Elton, left without closure from his experience with the Doctor, left seeking that closure, which only brings him into danger. But most importantly, we've got Jackie, Rose's mum, who she left behind. I love Jackie in this episode. She's been characterised through the show so far as like mouthy, a bit cheeky, a bit flirty, overprotective, fierce. Overall a good mum, but a bit dim and not one to walk away from an argument. But in this episode, we not only get more time with her than in any other episode, but we get these lovely, vulnerable moments where she talks about Rose. A joke is made about how keen she is to get Elton around her house, and we're led to believe it's, because she fancies him, and she's a bit of a player. But she also tells him to put the TV on, because she can't stand it quiet.
Put the telly on if you want. Can't bear it silent.
She leaves Rose's room made up, just in case she comes home. After she aggressively tries to get Elton to sleep with her, she talks to Rose, and she tells us,
I get left here sometimes, and I don't know where she is. Anything could be happening to her, anything, and I just go a bit mad.
She's lonely. She's so lonely, not only with the absence of Rose, but the nagging fear and worry about what's happening to her means that she can't really get on with her life. She's like Sarah Jane. The doctor's left her without closure. And when she finds out that Elton's after the doctor, she says,
"'Cause it's never me, is it?"
It's like what happened to Mickey. She's losing her identity because this force of nature, this oncoming storm of the doctor, is eclipsing her. He controls her life and her happiness by how often Rose comes to visit. But do they care? Rose and 10, do they care? No. In the Devil episodes, Rose is out of range of being able to call her mum, and she says,
Mind you, even if I could, what would I tell her?
Implying that Rose doesn't just tell her mum the truth. And it's fair enough, you don't want your mum to worry about you. But Jackie clearly knows that she doesn't get the whole truth because she says to Elton, anything could be happening to her. It just makes her more worried. If they had ended up dying in that episode, which they very nearly did, Jackie would have just never heard from her daughter again, never had closure, and that would have been torture. And they don't mention that once. And it's not only that, but Jackie can't talk about any of it. Elton asks questions and Jackie half answers them. Where's Rose? Travelling. She says about Mickey that he's gone now, which is another consequence of 10 and Rose's actions. She's protecting them, but it also means that she can't talk about any of it. She can't go to therapy and start talking about aliens because they're going to think that she's mad. And it might be too risky anyway. She just has to deal with it all on her own. And she seems to know that.
Let me tell you something about those who get left behind, because it's hard, and that's what you become, hard. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that I will never let her down.
In a way, she's sacrificing herself so that Rose can live this life. She's been pushed about as far as she can go. Her unconditional love for her daughter is being tested, pitted against her survival instinct. And she becomes hard so that she can cope, so that she can be there for Rose and protect her and not have a mental breakdown. It's kind of the equivalent of like a parent letting their kid go off to uni across the country, even though it's scary and it's heartbreaking. At a certain point, parenting turns from protecting your child actively to protecting them from afar, being there for them, letting them make their own mistakes, letting them grow. Once again, the sci-fi situations are just parallels for real life, relatable emotions.
It's a crossover hit. It's not just for fantasy enthusiasts. They're telling human stories in a fantasy world.
With Jackie, we see this continue in the episodes that follow. When the Doctor and Rose get captured by Torchwood in the finale, Jackie's with them. And when Rose is separated from the group, Jackie constantly brings up her safety, making the Doctor promise to keep her safe. A promise that he breaks multiple times over the episodes. At the climax of the final episode, Rose chooses to stay in this world despite the danger, while her family are to be sealed safely in the parallel world, never to be seen again. And she chooses this because of the Doctor. The situation here is basically that they need to open the void, the space between worlds which will pull in all of the beings that are coated in void stuff, the Daleks and the Cybermen, but also to a lesser extent, the Doctor and Rose. It's all going to plan, but when it starts to fail and the void starts to close, Rose puts herself in danger to keep it open. She succeeds, but she falls into the void. The call of the void. But notable here is that this isn't her choice. The Doctor, when he fell, chose that. Rose simply chose to stay with him, and falling was a consequence. He has the control. He lives on, he doesn't age, but the companions pay the price. Like Elton says, that's what happens when you touch the Doctor. A countdown begins until it all ends in tragedy. If Rose had fallen into the void, she wouldn't have died. It's a place of endless nothingness. They describe it as hell, which ties in beautifully with our themes. Hell in this universe is time without meaning. It's a lack of closure, the lack of an end. And in the end, it's not the Doctor that saves Rose. It's Jackie. Sent to the parallel world, she begs her husband to go back for Rose. She cries, and a few minutes later, he teleports in, stops Rose falling into the void, and teleports back. We can assume that this is because of Jackie, because he was the one saying, we can't go back for Rose. For him to change his mind about that so suddenly, that's Jackie's doing. The Doctor promised to keep Rose safe, and he failed. And if Jackie hadn't acted, then she would have been trapped in hell forever without closure. Her options in that moment were never see the Doctor again or hell. Salvation, damnation. Teleporting in, Pete doesn't know that he's about to save Rose's life. How could he? You can't see through the void. So Jackie would have told him to go and get Rose right before the portal closed, separating her forever from the Doctor. Her intention was to go directly against Rose's wishes, to just snatch her back at the last minute, an act which, if Rose hadn't actively been falling into hell when she'd done it, would have probably ruined their relationship forever. But Jackie does it anyway. And through Love and Monsters, through this examination of how her protectiveness over Rose has carried her through the loneliness and the anxiety of being left behind, we understand her. We understand why she did this. Once again, she's sacrificing. If Rose had just been standing there and Pete showed up and just snatched her away, Rose probably would have never spoken to Jackie ever again. And that's fine with Jackie because she's saving her, sacrificing that relationship for Rose's safety. It's something that the Doctor also tries to do earlier in the episode. He tries to send Rose away to the parallel world, but she refuses. But if his ultimate priority was her safety, he could have just said, let's go to the parallel universe together. But he wouldn't be able to bring the TARDIS with him if he said that. It's those themes that we talked about in School Reunion, how Rose is one in a long line of companions. You can spend the rest of your life with me. I can't spend the rest of mine with you. He's her whole world, but she can't be his. But she's Jackie's whole world. So ultimately, Jackie saves her. It's another example of something that happens so often in this series, that the Doctor isn't the one that saves the day. There are some episodes where he does. New Earth, Girl in the Fireplace. But the rest of the episodes are either him putting together the pieces of a solution that someone else has created, or giving someone else the tools to do the work themselves. In Love and Monsters, all the Doctor does at the climax is show up and say, mind you, they might have something to say about it, making Linda realise that they can pull. And that's it. And I like it that way. The Doctor isn't an action hero like in Girl in the Fireplace, more like Hurl in the Fireplace, because that episode sucks. He's a guy who's very old, he's seen a lot of stuff.
I'm so old now.
He doesn't carry a gun, he says that books are the best weapon there is. He's essentially just like an outer space consultant, and that leaves room for regular people to be the heroes. But despite this, Elton refers to the Doctor as having saved him. The power of friendship literally saved you. This whole episode, and as I think I've shown this whole series, is about deconstructing this idea of the Doctor. Mr. Skinner describes him as a series of archetypes. Bridget shows the TARDIS through history like a religious symbol. Bliss makes avant-garde art about what he represents. He's mythologized. He's folklore. He inspires all of them in different ways. For example, Bridget, whose daughter is missing, I think she comes to the meetings just for hope. If aliens and time travel exist, then the world is bigger and more complicated than we understand. And so she might find her daughter someday. She might be okay. When they break away from this obsession with the Doctor, when they start just being a group of friends, when Bridget confides in the others, they have a good time. They flourish. But when Victor Kennedy comes in and reignites the obsession, they lose their humanity. And that countdown that ends in tragedy starts ticking for them too. Another thing that aids this exploration is the structure of the episode. So I described it as Doctor Light, aka it doesn't follow the Doctor or the companion. And as far as I can tell, this is the very first episode of Doctor Who ever to do this. And that's incredible, because according to Wikipedia, do you know how many episodes of classic Doctor Who there are? 695. In all those episodes, there was not once an episode that didn't follow the Doctor or the companion, if we believe David Tennant and Russell T Davies, who are two of the only men I would be okay meeting in the woods.
In terms of Doctor Who, it's pretty much the only time that's happened, that there's a story which isn't from the point of view of the Doctor or his companion.
And this happened because of scheduling.
Episode 10 was like having a long shopping list of things like not much Doctor and Rose because we were double banking. And what double banking means is shooting 2 episodes at the same time. At the same time, we had the Blue Peter competition winner. That young lad invented the absorbaloff. At the same time, I had a letter from Peter Kay saying I'm dying to be in Doctor Who, and you begin to think absorbaloff, Peter Kay. That's the various elements start to come together. I had to come up with a story that had to have a logical reason for not having much of the Doctor and Rose in it.
So I just think that this is incredible. I've talked a lot about how well this episode fits into the series in terms of theme and pacing, which would be a feat in itself, even if you were given all of the time and resources in the world. But Russell T Davies had this shopping list, and he had to turn it into a script. And he fucking did it. He pulled it off, that son of a bitch. The Doctor Light structure of the episode works perfectly with our themes, because like I said, regular people are the heroes. It's part of this deconstruction of the myth of the Doctor, taking him entirely out of the picture. David Tennant is hot. David Tennant is sexy.
You've been looking. You like it.
And charismatic and charming. And the script is well written and funny. And so even when fucked up shit is happening, you're like, Fuck yeah. I love the Doctor. Woo! But take him out and you only see the damage he does, what he leaves behind. That ripple effect that every single thing he does has on regular people. All through this series, it's about those consequences and those effects. And here we get a boots on the ground look at that. It's a series that holds humanity in such high regard, and it puts its money where its mouth is with this episode. Really puts its faith in these characters to carry this Dr. Light episode, and in my opinion, it succeeds. Elton is so sweet and so likeable, and the members of Linda are very sympathetic, and you're like genuinely kind of sad when they die. Ursula and Elton's romance is very subtle, but you know, it got me invested. The character study of Jackie is beautifully done. It doesn't feel forced. It feels so organic, and it really has room to breathe without the Doctor and Rose taking the attention. The ELO soundtrack brings depth to Elton and his interests, and it also gives the episode like a timeless, nostalgic kind of feel. The use of footage that Elton shoots himself adds authenticity. This was 2006, before people sitting in front of cameras in their bedrooms and talking was a brand of content, but it has all the same parasocial effects. We feel like we know him, we feel connected with him, his humanity. For me personally, with all of my biases, it just takes me right back to my childhood home in 2006, cuddled up with my mum and sister watching Doctor Who every Saturday on the CRT. Bliss. So, all this to say, what is my interpretation of the absorbaloff? What does he represent? What is his narrative use? His purpose? It was designed by a kid, right? No offense to William Grantham, but I'm sure he wasn't 9 years old thinking, this represents hubris. But the showrunners picked the winner, and I feel like they did that based on storytelling potential. The faces show up on the body, they can talk to you. One touch, that's all it takes. It sparks the imagination. In his human form, Victor Kennedy is temptation, the urge to fall, that itching need to find out more, tempting them away from their humanity. Tying in with this series-long theme of just because you can doesn't mean you should. The absorbaloff himself says he'll return to his home planet once he has the TARDIS and he's absorbed the Doctor. So he was tempted away from his own community, his own peers, by this desire for the Doctor, for knowledge and power. He never would have been on Earth, never would have killed Elton's friends if not for the Doctor. The Doctor brought them together and tore them apart. And there's also this theme of touch that's been popping up through the series. In New Earth, the sick patients spread the disease with touch, but they also spread the cure. In Fear Her, the Doctor says he needs someone to hold his hand. In Doomsday, the Daleks need someone to touch the Genesis Ark in order to open it.
Technology using the one thing a Dalek can't do. Touch. See you inside your casing. Not feeling anything. Ever. No wonder you scream.
And the Cybermen obviously can't touch people either. Then when they say goodbye at Bad Wolf Bay, the Doctor is just an image.
No touch.
Here in this episode, it takes one touch to absorb someone. I got chills, actual chills, during my rewatch. When Ursula is being absorbed and she says to Elton, "I'm so sorry, you can't touch me." She delivers the line like it's the ultimate tragedy, because it is. They were literally on their way to their first date, and now to touch her would kill him. No first kiss, no intimacy, no touch. The absorbaloff uses touch to kill people. He taints it, corrupts it. Something that's a force for good, that represents humanity, is now evil. The way that the faces appear on the body is ultimately really about loss. These people are functionally dead. Only their faces and their minds remain, but they're able to talk, to give these messages from beyond the grave. And the message is, we care about you. We care about your safety. They don't spend the whole time screaming and crying and saying, "Get me out of here," like I probably would. Their main priority is Elton. They save his life by pooling their willpower. They give up this last shred of life that they have for him, to save him, right as he's given up. When you're left behind by someone who passes away, if they cared about you, they want you to be happy. They want you to survive. It's okay to move on. Being a head on Peter Kay's ass, that's not a life. It's not death, not completely, but it's not life. It's cruel how the monster keeps them in this stasis. He says it's everlasting peace, and I'm inclined to believe him like a little bit because of how they're not like screaming and crying, but it's not like it's heaven. As Sarah Jane said, everything has its time, everything dies. Closure, an end That's what his friends need. That's what Elton needs. That's what Jackie needs. Life is only valuable because it ends. So, in conclusion, fine. I'll talk about the paving slab blowjob joke. It's what you've been waiting for, isn't it? Little freaks. So after the absorbaloff is destroyed, the Doctor manages to bring Ursula's face and mind back in the form of a paving slab. Elton then owns this paving slab. This paving slab is his girlfriend. They have a bit of a love life. Russell. I don't condone this decision, but let me at least attempt to rationalise it. Okay? After Elton says about how the Doctor is damnation and salvation, Ursula's little voice pipes up, and she says,
Oh, now don't get all miserable. Come on, Elton. You still got me.
Elton tells us about how the Doctor saved him one last time.
The Doctor saved me one last time.
The Doctor was too late to save Elton's mum. He was too late to save Ursula properly. But this is what he can do. Save Elton. Save him from being alone. Elton was ready to give up before the Doctor appeared. He said everything he ever wanted was gone. Without his paving slab GF, Elton was literally ready to Harry Hill himself. It's hope. It's a tiny little scrap of inconvenient, goofy, amateurish hope. And so he's left with a positive message at the end of the episode. It was just the thing that he needed. Elton says that the Doctor saved him. And this time, I agree. It's kind of a horrible life for Ursula though, because I already said it's unimaginably horrific to imagine living on Peter Kay's ass forever as a disembodied face. But she's making the best of it. She's happy to be alive. She's not attached to the creature anymore. She's independent, kind of, with the man that she loves. She says it could be worse. He says that they manage. It's compromise. It's cope. And it's so human because what else is she going to do? She's functionally immortal now. She could go insane, but she doesn't. Elton has a really interesting line where he just says, "We forget because we must. We all know we're going to die, but we press on. It's part of the human experience. Sometimes you just have to compartmentalize and find happiness where you can." Now, the blowjob joke. Elton says it's a relationship of sorts. We even have a bit of a love life. And Ursula replies, bashful,
Oh, let's not go into that.
I want to remind you that this show is for children. Me, watching this 9 years old, I didn't know what love life meant. I thought it just meant they were BFGF. Cute. Happy ending. Watching it as a teenager, ew, gross. They've been kissing. It's a great example of one of those jokes that works differently for different ages. But that doesn't mean that the true interpretation is that he's been putting his Piggly Wiggly into the paving slab's mouth. He could literally just mean kissing. And even if he has been doing that, so what? Wouldn't you? I would. She must get so bored. As long as he has her consent. What's the damage? We had that tragic moment where they could never touch, but now they can. And they do. And good for them. I guess it's a little TMI. But he says he doesn't care what anyone thinks. Clearly, I wish them well. Me and who? Me and Doctor Who. Okay, actual conclusion. Love and Monsters is not only not a bad episode, but it is underrated. In terms of the episode itself, in isolation, we've got a banging soundtrack, a deep and thorough exploration of the effect the Doctor has on those he leaves behind, jokes that I still reference, tears like chicken, a tight and well-executed storyline, a revolutionary new way to make an episode of Doctor Who, comedy, tragedy, horror, drama, hope. In context as an episode within the series, it fits perfectly between the two-parter with the Devil and the series finale. This series is so packed full of interesting explorations into morality, character dynamics, consequences, religion, faith, love, feelings of belonging, feelings of loss and grief, life and death. And it all ramps up to a boiling point with Love and Monsters, putting us in the perfect place, the perfect critical mindset for the series finale, where the consequences all come crashing down. Somehow, it's a crescendo of everything that's come so far in the series, as well as being the catharsis we need before the darkness of the finale. Comedy and tragedy in perfect balance. In this episode, with all of this discussion about the Doctor, interpretation of him, search for him, obsession with him, examination and deconstruction of him, we pull out themes of hope, loss, love, perseverance, courage, sacrifice, loneliness, temptation, salvation, damnation. Because, ultimately, it's an episode about humanity.
I love writing that sort of stuff and sort of saying, never mind your great pantheons and your great mythologies and all those things that will insist that you're very small and very tiny. Actually, those ordinary people are the most important thing. They are what the universe is all about.
And Elton's last lines of the episode are the thesis.
You know, when you're a kid, they tell you it's all grow up, get a job, get married, get a house, have a kid, and that's it. The truth is, the world is so much stranger than that. It's so much darker, and so much madder, and so much better.
I'm gonna say it. Love and Monsters makes me happy to be alive. Fight me. I give it 10 out of 10, and you will come and fight me. Okay, that was my heartfelt defense of Love and Monsters. Thank you for watching. This is my first non-Stardew Valley video, so let me know if you liked it. If you did like it, maybe you could give it a like, and maybe you could subscribe to my YouTube channel. That would be that'd be really cool of you. Please join my Patreon so I have enough money to live, and I will see you in the next video. Oh, what's that? Oh, whoa.